Dr. Cathara moved through the sterile corridors of Research Station Nexus 7 with practiced ease. Her 6 arms carried data tablets, specimen containers, and analysis tools as she prepared for another routine evaluation. The Zephyrian scientist had conducted first-contact assessments for over 200 species in her career. Most followed predictable patterns. Today's subjects were different only in their name. The species called themselves humans and came from a small blue planet on the outer edge of the galaxy. Their preliminary data suggested they were nothing special. Average intelligence, standard bipedal form, and reaction times that barely qualified as adequate by galactic standards. Cathara's assistant, a young Zephyrian named Velos, hovered nearby with obvious excitement. This was his first evaluation of a new species, and he couldn't contain his enthusiasm. "Doctor, the human delegation has arrived," Velos announced, his voice carrying the musical quality of his species. "Should we begin the standard battery of tests?" Cathara nodded, reviewing the data one more time. The humans had been discovered only 6 months ago when their primitive radio signals reached a galactic survey probe. Their technology was centuries behind most civilized species, but they had achieved faster-than-light communication, which qualified them for contact protocols. The first human to enter the testing chamber was a male specimen named Jake Martinez. He wore a simple blue uniform with symbols that presumably indicated rank or function. His movements were deliberate but slow, lacking the fluid grace of the Veltari or the precise efficiency of the Nexari. He looked around the chamber with obvious curiosity, his eyes taking in the alien equipment with what appeared to be wonder rather than fear. "Commander Martinez," Cathara said, her universal translator converting her words into the human's primitive language. "Welcome to Nexus 7. I am Dr. Cathara, head of xenobiology for this sector. We will be conducting some basic assessments today." Jake nodded and smiled, showing his teeth in what Cathara had learned was a friendly gesture among humans. "Thank you, Doctor. I'm honored to be here. This is Dr. Lisa Harper, our lead neurobiologist." The female human stepped forward. She was smaller than Jake, but carried herself with quiet confidence. Her eyes were alert and intelligent, constantly observing and analyzing. She reminded Cathara of herself in some ways, though obviously much more primitive. "Dr. Harper," Cathara acknowledged, "your expertise will be valuable. Please, both of you, step onto the testing platform." The platform rose slightly from the floor, covered in sensors that would monitor every aspect of the human's performance. Cathara began with simple coordination tests. Jake and Lisa were asked to catch falling objects, respond to light signals, and solve basic puzzles. Jake's performance was exactly what the preliminary data suggested. His reaction time to visual stimuli averaged 280 milliseconds. When asked to catch a falling sphere, he succeeded, but with no particular grace or speed. His puzzle solving was methodical and correct, but he took nearly 3 times longer than a typical Veltari would need. Lisa performed slightly better in the cognitive tasks, but showed similar limitations in physical responses. Her reaction time was 250 milliseconds, respectable but unremarkable. When faced with a complex pattern recognition test, she worked through it systematically, reaching the correct answer but taking considerable time. Velos recorded everything with growing disappointment. "Doctor," he whispered, "their neural processing speed is quite limited. Look at these coordination scores." Cathara nodded. She had seen this pattern before. Many species from the galactic rim were simply slower than those from the core worlds. It wasn't their fault, but it did limit their potential contributions to galactic civilization. "Commander Martinez," she said, "we'd like to test your decision-making under pressure. Please observe the screen." A complex scenario appeared showing a spacecraft navigation problem. Multiple obstacles moved across the display, requiring quick decisions to avoid collisions. Jake studied the screen for a moment, then began making choices. His responses seemed slow, but strangely, his ship avoided every obstacle with room to spare. "Interesting," Lisa observed, watching her colleague work. "Jake, you're not just reacting to the obstacles, you're predicting where they'll be." Jake paused, looking confused. Isn't that what everyone does? I mean, if you can see something moving, you can tell where it's going to be, right? Cathara exchanged glances with Velos. The human statement was technically correct, but most species focused on reacting to immediate threats rather than predicting future positions. It was an inefficient use of processing power. The testing continued for several hours. Jake and Lisa performed adequately in every category but excelled in none. Their physical capabilities were average. Their reaction times were below galactic standards, and their cognitive processing was methodical rather than brilliant. However, something nagged at Cathara. Despite their slow responses, both humans had achieved perfect scores on every test. They might have been slower than other species, but they hadn't made a single mistake. Even the fastest species occasionally missed a target or made a wrong choice under pressure. "Dr. Harper," Cathara said as the testing session ended, "your species seems to prioritize accuracy over speed. Is this a cultural trait or a biological?" "One," Lisa considered the question carefully. "I think it's both, Doctor. Humans learned long ago that being right is more important than being fast. A quick wrong decision can be fatal, but a slow right decision usually works out fine." Jake nodded in agreement. "Where we come from, the environment was pretty dangerous. The animals that survived weren't necessarily the fastest ones. They were the ones that made good decisions about when to run, when to fight, and when to hide." Cathara filed this information away. It was mildly interesting from an evolutionary perspective, but it didn't change the fundamental assessment. Humans were a slow, methodical species with limited reflexes and average intelligence. They might make useful trade partners eventually, but they would never be major players in galactic affairs. After the humans left, Cathara began preparing her report. She had conducted these evaluations hundreds of times, and the format was always the same: species classification, capability, assessment, and recommendations for future contact. Species designation, human, she dictated to her recording device. Classification, standard biological sentience. Average intelligence with methodical cognitive processing. Physical capabilities within normal parameters but below galactic average for reaction time and coordination. She paused, considering her. Recommendations. Suggested trade status, limited partnership. Areas of potential contribution, unknown at this time. Combat assessment, minimal threat level due to slow reflexes and methodical decision-making process. Velos looked up from his data analysis. "Doctor, should we schedule follow-up evaluations?" Cathara considered this. Standard protocol called for additional testing only if a species showed exceptional promise or posed a significant threat. Humans clearly fell into neither category. No immediate follow-up required, she decided. File the report with the Galactic Council. The humans seem pleasant enough, but they're not going to surprise anyone? As she sealed the report and prepared to move on to the next species evaluation, Cathara felt a moment of sympathy for the humans. They seemed eager to participate in galactic civilization, but their biological limitations would always hold them back. It was unfortunate, but the galaxy had little use for slow reflexes and methodical thinking. The report was filed. The humans returned to their ship, and Research Station Nexus 7 prepared for its next routine evaluation. Nobody expected to hear much about humans again anytime soon. 3 months after the first contact evaluation, the galaxy buzzed with excitement about the Galactic Athletic Championships. The event was held every 5 years on Harmony Prime, a neutral world designed specifically for interspecies gatherings. Athletes from dozens of worlds would compete in tests of speed, agility, intelligence, and coordination. For the first time in the championship's history, humans had been invited to participate. The invitation was largely ceremonial, a gesture of goodwill toward the newest members of the galactic community. Nobody expected them to be competitive, but the Galactic Sports Council believed in inclusion over excellence. Captain Ryan Brooks stood in the human delegation's quarters, adjusting his flight suit and trying to calm his nerves. The former Air Force pilot had been selected to represent humanity in the flight simulation category. His credentials were impressive by human standards, but he had no idea how he would measure up against alien pilots with reflexes 5 times faster than his own. "You'll do fine," said Dr. Amy Collins, checking her own equipment. The emergency room surgeon had been chosen for the precision under pressure events, where competitors had to perform delicate tasks while dealing with distractions and time limits. "Just remember, we're not here to win. We're here to show that humans can compete." Ryan nodded, though he wasn't entirely convinced. He had studied the performance records of other species, and the numbers were intimidating. The Veltari regularly achieved reaction times under 10 milliseconds. The crystalline Nexari could process multiple complex problems simultaneously. Even the peaceful Zephyrians had coordination abilities that made human pilots look clumsy. The opening ceremony was spectacular. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive stadium, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. The humans drew curious stares from the crowd. Most aliens had never seen their species before, and many seemed surprised by how ordinary they looked. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings," announced the competition master, a tall, elegant creature with 4 arms and silver skin. "Welcome to the 847th Galactic Athletic Championships. May the best reflexes win." The first events were pure speed competitions. Veltari athletes moved so fast they appeared as blurs to human eyes. Their recorded times were measured in milliseconds, and they covered complex obstacle courses in seconds. The crowd cheered as records were broken and new benchmarks established. Ryan watched from the sidelines, feeling increasingly out of place. When his turn came for the preliminary flight simulation, he climbed into the cockpit with growing dread. The simulation was designed to test pilot reflexes and decision-making under pressure. Obstacles appeared without warning, requiring split-second reactions to avoid collisions. The alien pilots before him had navigated the course with incredible speed, their ships dancing through the obstacles like leaves in the wind. Ryan took a deep breath and began his run. His ship moved more slowly than the others, but it moved smoothly. When obstacles appeared, he didn't just react to them. He seemed to know where they would be before they got there. The crowd watched with polite interest as the human pilot made his way through the course. His recorded reaction times were exactly what everyone expected, hovering around 250 milliseconds. But something was different about his performance. While other pilots reacted to each obstacle as it appeared, Ryan seemed to be flying a different course entirely, one that took him around obstacles that hadn't even materialized yet. "Curious," observed Dr. Cathara, who was attending the championships as part of her research duties. "The human's reaction time is slow, but his navigation is remarkably efficient." Dr. Amy Collins faced her own challenges in the precision events. She was tasked with performing delicate surgical procedures while dealing with loud noises, flashing lights, and time pressure. The other competitors worked with incredible speed, their enhanced reflexes allowing them to maintain precision despite the distractions. Amy worked more slowly, but her movements were steady and sure. While other competitors occasionally made mistakes under pressure, requiring them to start over, Amy's work was consistently accurate. She might have been slower, but she never had to repeat a procedure. The real surprise came during the combat simulation round. This event was designed to test crisis management and tactical thinking. Competitors were placed in a virtual command center and faced with a complex military scenario involving multiple threats appearing simultaneously. The Veltari commanders reacted with lightning speed, issuing orders and responses almost faster than the simulation could process them. The Nexari used their distributed consciousness to handle multiple threats at once. The Zephyrians coordinated their responses with mathematical precision. Ryan's turn came last. The simulation began with a routine patrol scenario, but within seconds, everything went wrong. Enemy ships appeared from multiple directions, using stealth technology and advanced tactics. System failures cascaded through his virtual command center. Communication links were jammed. Sensors provided conflicting information, while other competitors had reacted to each crisis as it developed. Ryan did something different. He seemed to anticipate problems before they became critical. When his sensors were jammed, He had already repositioned his ships to areas where they could operate effectively without sensor data. When enemy reinforcements appeared, he had already moved his forces to positions where they could intercept them. The alien observers watched in confusion. According to their instruments, Ryan's reaction time was still around 250 milliseconds, exactly what they expected from a human. But his actions were devastatingly effective. His fleet didn't just respond to enemy moves. It seemed to be always one step ahead of them. "How is this possible?" asked Velos, studying the data with growing bewilderment. His measured reaction time suggests he should be overwhelmed by the complexity of the scenario. Dr. Cathara leaned forward, her 6 arms working frantically to analyze the performance data. "Look at the timing more carefully," she said. "He's not reacting to threats after they appear. He's positioning his forces based on where he expects threats to develop." The simulation ended with Ryan achieving the highest tactical score of any competitor. Despite having the slowest measured reflexes, the crowd was stunned into silence. Nobody had expected the methodical human to outperform species with reaction times 10 times faster than his own. "There must be an error in the simulation," declared Commander Zexon, a Veltari military officer whose own performance had been impressive but ultimately less effective than Ryan's. No species with such slow reflexes could achieve tactical superiority, but there was no error. The simulation had functioned perfectly, recording every decision and reaction with precise accuracy. Ryan had simply played the game differently than anyone else. While other competitors reacted to events as they happened, he had anticipated events before they occurred. Amy also surprised everyone in her final precision event. Faced with an incredibly complex surgical scenario involving multiple patients with conflicting needs, she worked with her characteristic methodical approach. Other competitors, despite their speed, became overwhelmed by the complexity and began making errors. Amy simply prioritized her patients based on what she expected their conditions to become, rather than what they currently were. The results were announced to a confused and fascinated audience. In pure speed events, humans had performed exactly as expected, finishing in the middle of the pack. But in complex, multivariable scenarios, they had achieved results that defied their measured capabilities. "I don't understand," Ryan said to Amy as they prepared to leave the competition arena. "I felt like I was moving too slowly the whole time. How did we end up with decent scores?" Amy smiled thoughtfully. "I think we were playing a different game than everyone else. They were trying to react faster than the problems could develop. We were trying to solve problems before they became critical." As the human delegation prepared to return to their quarters, alien scientists and military officers clustered around Dr. Cathara, demanding explanations. How could a species with such slow reflexes achieve such impressive results in complex scenarios? "I don't know," Cathara admitted, her scientific curiosity thoroughly aroused. "But I think we may have seriously misunderstood what we were measuring during their initial evaluation." The championships continued for several more days, but the talk among the alien participants centered increasingly on the human paradox. In controlled, predictable situations, humans performed exactly as their biology suggested they should. But in complex, unpredictable scenarios, they achieved results that seemed impossible given their measured capabilities. Ryan and Amy became minor celebrities among the alien athletes, who peppered them with questions about human training methods and decision-making processes. The humans tried to explain their approach, but the aliens found their answers unsatisfying. "We just try to think ahead," Ryan explained to a group of Veltari pilots. "If you can see where a situation is going, you can be ready for it when it gets there." "But how do you process future scenarios when your neural processing speed is so limited?" asked one of the pilots. Ryan looked confused. "I don't know, we just do." "Doesn't everyone?" The answer would have to wait. The championships were. The attack came without warning during the final day of the championships. Harmony Prime's peaceful atmosphere was shattered when ships belonging to the Void Syndicate, a notorious pirate organization, emerged from hyperspace in a coordinated assault. Their stealth technology had allowed them to bypass the planet's early warning systems, and their overwhelming numbers quickly overwhelmed the orbital defenses. Alarms blared throughout the championship complex as emergency protocols activated. The various alien species reacted according to their nature and training. The Veltari security forces moved with incredible speed, their enhanced reflexes allowing them to respond to threats almost instantaneously. The Nexari began processing multiple data streams simultaneously, analyzing the attack patterns and coordinating defensive responses. The Zephyrians used their natural coordination abilities to organize evacuations and manage resources, but something was wrong. Despite their incredible speed and efficiency, the alien defenses were being systematically dismantled. The pirates seemed to know exactly where the defenders would be and when they would arrive. Every countermeasure was anticipated and neutralized. Ryan Brooks was in the pilot quarters when the attack began, reviewing flight data from the competitions. The emergency klaxons sent him running toward the hangar bays, where civilian ships were being prepared for evacuation. His training kicked in automatically, but something felt different about this situation. The evacuation routes are compromised, he told the hangar chief, a four-armed Zephyrian who was frantically coordinating departure schedules. The pirates are herding us towards specific exit points. The hangar chief looked at him with confusion. How can you know this? The attack only began 5 minutes ago. Ryan studied the tactical displays showing ship movements around the planet. Look at their positioning. They're not trying to destroy everything at once. They're controlling the flow of traffic. That means they want prisoners or cargo, not just destruction. While he was speaking, Dr. Amy Collins arrived with a group of injured aliens. The station's medical bay had been damaged in the initial attack, and she was coordinating emergency triage in the hangar. Her movements were calm and methodical, but her eyes constantly scanned the area around her. We need to move the critical patients first, she told the evacuation coordinators, but not in the first wave of ships. The pirates will target those to force the others to remain. How do you know what they will target? Asked a Veltari medic, his species' natural speed making him seem almost frantic compared to Amy's steady movements. Because that's what I would do, Amy replied, continuing to organize patients. Maximum psychological impact with minimum resource expenditure. Across the complex, Security Chief Ben Rodriguez was experiencing his own moment of clarity. He had been assigned to the human delegation as a bodyguard, but his military background was proving more valuable than anyone had expected. While alien security forces responded to each attack with incredible speed, Ben was positioning his small team of humans where the next attacks would occur. Rodriguez, to all human personnel, he spoke into his communicator. Ignore the current attack positions. Focus on corridors 7, 12, and 18. That's where they'll be in 10 minutes. How can you be certain? Asked Commander Jake Martinez, who was helping coordinate the overall defense. Because they're not random attacks, Ben replied, studying the building's layout. They're probing for specific targets. The pattern tells me they're looking for the championship records database and the diplomatic quarters. If I wanted those targets, I'd use the current attacks as distractions while I moved real assault teams through the back corridors. The alien commanders found the human predictions difficult to accept. Their own tactical computers were analyzing the attacks in real time, but the humans seemed to be operating on different information entirely. While the aliens reacted to each new development, the humans were preparing for developments that hadn't happened yet. The breakthrough came when one of Ben's predictions proved correct. Pirate assault teams emerged from Corridor 12 exactly as he had predicted, only to find human defenders already in position. The surprised pirates were quickly overwhelmed, their advanced weapons useless against enemies who had been waiting for them. Impossible, breathed Commander Zexon, watching the tactical displays. How did they know? The pattern repeated throughout the complex. While alien forces responded to attacks with lightning speed, they were always one step behind the pirates. Strategy. The humans, despite their slow reflexes, seemed to be always one step ahead. They weren't reacting to the current situation. They were responding to what the situation was becoming. Dr. Cathara found herself trapped in the research wing with a group of other scientists when pirates breached the section. The aliens' natural response was to find the fastest escape route. But Lisa Harper, who had been working with Cathara on some preliminary research, grabbed her arm. "Not that way," Lisa said urgently. "They'll have that corridor covered in 60 seconds. How can you possibly know that?" Cathara asked, her 6 arms fluttering with anxiety. "Because they're not here to kill scientists," Lisa replied already. Moving toward a different exit. "They're here to capture us. That corridor leads to the hangar bays, which is where they want to drive us. We need to go deeper into the complex." The prediction proved correct. As they moved through the service tunnels, they could hear pirates setting up positions along the main corridor, exactly where Lisa had said they would be. The humans' slow, methodical approach to the crisis was somehow more effective than the aliens' lightning-fast reactions. The turning point came when Captain Ryan Brooks reached the fighter hangar. The pirates had disabled most of the defense grid, but a few fighters remained operational. The alien pilots were preparing for a desperate counterattack, planning to use their superior reflexes to outfly the pirate ships. "Wait," Ryan said, studying the tactical situation. "You're thinking about this wrong. They want you to launch now." "What do you mean?" asked a Veltari pilot whose ship was already powering up. "Look at their formation," Ryan explained. "They're positioned to funnel our fighters into a killing zone. But in 3 minutes, they'll have to reposition to intercept the evacuation ships. That's when we launch." The alien pilots were skeptical. Their combat doctrine emphasized speed above all else. The longer they waited, the more time the pirates had to prepare. But something in Ryan's certainty made them pause. 3 minutes. Ryan repeated. "Then we launch along Vector 77 Alpha. Not toward the pirate ships, but toward where they'll be when they realize we're not doing what they expected." The plan sounded insane to the alien pilots, but they had witnessed enough human predictions come true to give it a chance. 3 minutes. Later, they launched following Ryan's unconventional flight path. The pirates, caught in the middle of repositioning their ships, were completely unprepared for the attack angle. The counterattack succeeded brilliantly, breaking the pirates' coordination and forcing them to retreat. As the immediate crisis passed, the alien defenders found themselves confused and shaken. They had been outmaneuvered by pirates despite having superior technology and faster reflexes. But somehow, the humans had predicted and countered every pirate strategy. "I don't understand," Admiral Krenta, the Veltari fleet commander, said to Jake Martinez. "Your species has the slowest recorded reflexes in the galaxy. How did you anticipate enemy movements that our tactical computers couldn't predict?" Jake looked around at his fellow humans, all of whom seemed equally puzzled by the question. "We weren't anticipating their movements," he said finally. "We were anticipating their goals. Once you know what someone is trying to achieve, you can figure out how they're going to try to achieve it. But how do you process all the variables quickly enough to make those predictions?" asked Dr. Cathara, her scientific curiosity overcoming her relief at surviving the attack. "We don't process them quickly," Amy replied. "We process them constantly. Every human is always running mental simulations of what might happen next. It's not something we think about. It's just how our minds work." The implications of this statement began to sink in among the alien observers. The humans weren't reacting to the pirate attack. They had been predicting variations of it from the moment it began, while the aliens used their superior reflexes to respond to each new development. The humans were responding to developments that hadn't occurred yet. "Fascinating," murmured Dr. Cathara. "You're not operating in the same temporal framework as the rest of us. While we react to the present, you're responding to the future." The crisis was over, but the questions it raised were just beginning. The galaxy had seriously underestimated humanity, not because they had measured human capabilities incorrectly, but because they had measured the wrong capabilities entirely. Human reflexes were slow, but human prediction was something else entirely. As the rescue ships arrived and the complex began to assess the damage, Word of the human performance spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. The species that had seemed so unremarkable just days before had somehow outmaneuvered one of the galaxy's most feared pirate organizations. Ben Rodriguez found himself surrounded by alien military officers, all demanding to know how he had PR. The emergency research session began 3 hours after the pirate attack ended. Dr. Cathara had insisted on immediate access to advanced neurological scanning equipment, and the Galactic Council had approved her request without question. The human performance during the crisis had shaken conventional understanding of intelligence and reflexes so thoroughly that answers were desperately needed. Dr. Lisa Harper sat patiently in the scanning chamber while alien medical equipment analyzed her brain activity. The machines hummed and clicked around her, recording neural patterns with precision that far exceeded anything available on Earth. Around the chamber, xenobiologists from 6 different species watched the data streams with growing amazement. Impossible, breathed Dr. Yefara, a Nexari scientist whose crystalline structure allowed her to process multiple data streams simultaneously. Look at the predictive modeling activity. Her brain is running thousands of scenario simulations every second. Lisa smiled from inside the scanner. Is that unusual? I thought everyone did that. No, Dr. Cathara replied, her 6 arms dancing across control panels as she adjusted the scanning parameters. Most species process information as it arrives. You're processing information that hasn't arrived yet. The revelation had begun with a simple question. How could humans with 250 millisecond reaction times outperform species with 10 millisecond reaction times in complex situations? The answer was becoming clearer through the neurological scans, but it challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about intelligence and decision-making. Captain Ryan Brooks was in the adjacent scanning chamber, his brain being analyzed while he performed flight simulations. The alien scientists watched in fascination as his neural activity patterns showed him responding to obstacles before they appeared on the screen. He's not reacting to the obstacles, observed Dr. Melphus, a Zephyrian neurologist. He's anticipating where they will be based on their current trajectories. But the computational requirements for that level of prediction should be enormous. That's the key, Lisa said, overhearing the conversation. We're not computing the predictions consciously. Our brains do it automatically, constantly, without us even being aware of it. Dr. Cathara paused in her analysis, a new understanding beginning to form. You mean this predictive capability operates at a subconscious level? Everything operates at a subconscious level, Ryan replied from his scanner. When I'm flying, I'm not consciously calculating where other ships will be. I just know where they're going to be. My brain figures it out without me having to think about it. The implications were staggering. The alien scientists had been measuring human reaction times to unexpected stimuli. But humans rarely encountered truly unexpected stimuli. Their brains were constantly predicting what would happen next, turning surprises into anticipated events. Dr. Amy Collins arrived for her scanning session with a group of alien patients she had been treating. Even during the research session, she continued to provide medical care, but her approach puzzled the alien doctors. Why are you treating his symptoms before they manifest? Asked Dr. Krenlos, a Veltari physician. The patient shows no signs of neural inflammation. Amy looked at the patient, a young Zephyrian who had been injured during the attack. He will in about 6 hours. His injury pattern and stress indicators suggest his nervous system is heading toward an inflammatory response. It's better to prevent it than treat it after it happens. But how can you know this without detailed biochemical analysis? Dr. Krenlos asked. Experience, Amy replied simply. I've seen this injury pattern before. The progression is predictable if you know what to look for. The alien doctors were amazed when Amy's prediction proved correct. Her patient developed exactly the symptoms she had anticipated at exactly the time she had predicted. But because she had already begun treatment, the symptoms were mild and easily managed. Remarkable, Dr. Cathara said, reviewing the medical data. Dr. Collins isn't just treating current conditions. She's treating future conditions based on predicted progression patterns. The research continued for hours, with each test revealing new aspects of human predictive capability. When humans performed simple reaction tests, they scored exactly as expected. But when they performed complex, multivariable tasks, they achieved results that seemed impossible given their measured neural processing speed. The breakthrough came when Dr. Cathara realized they were measuring the wrong thing entirely. "We've been testing reaction speed," she announced to the assembled scientists. "But humans don't react to stimuli. They predict stimuli and prepare responses in advance." She pulled up a comparison chart showing human performance versus other species. "Look at the pattern. In controlled laboratory conditions, humans perform exactly as their biology suggests. But in complex, real-world scenarios, they outperform species with much faster reflexes." "Because real-world scenarios are predictable," Lisa added from her scanner. "There are patterns and causes and effects. Our brains evolved to recognize those patterns and prepare for their consequences." Security. Chief Ben Rodriguez joined the discussion, fresh from debriefing sessions with alien military commanders. The pirate strategy seemed random to most species because they were reacting to individual moves. But every move was part of a larger pattern leading to specific objectives. "And you recognize the pattern," Dr. Cathara said. "Not consciously." Ben replied, "But something in my brain was tracking their goals and predicting their methods. When I realized they wanted prisoners and information rather than destruction, their tactics became obvious." The alien scientists struggled to understand this concept. Their species had evolved different cognitive strategies. The Veltari emphasized speed, reacting to threats as quickly as possible. The Nexari used parallel processing, handling multiple problems simultaneously. The Zephyrians coordinated group responses, sharing information instantly, but humans had evolved something different. They had developed the ability to live slightly in the future, making decisions based on what they expected to happen rather than what was currently happening. "It's an evolutionary adaptation," Dr. Lisa Harper explained, now out of the scanner and reviewing the data. "Early humans weren't the fastest or strongest predators on Earth. They survived by being the most adaptable. Our brains evolved to predict and plan, not just react." She pulled up a holographic display showing human evolutionary history. "Our ancestors had to predict weather patterns, animal migrations, seasonal changes. They had to anticipate threats and opportunities. Speed wasn't as important as accuracy." "But why does this make you more effective in complex situations?" asked Dr. Yathara. "Because complex situations have more variables to predict," Ryan answered. "The more complex the situation, the more advantage we get from thinking ahead. Simple situations don't give us much to work with." The research team began to understand the human paradox. In laboratory conditions, humans were limited by their biological reaction times. But in real-world conditions, they were operating on a different temporal framework entirely. They weren't reacting to the present. They were implementing decisions made moments or even minutes earlier. "This explains your performance during the crisis," Dr. Cathara said. "While other species were reacting to the pirates' current actions, you were responding to actions you predicted they would take." "Exactly," Ben confirmed. "I wasn't faster than the pirates. I was earlier than the pirates. I got to the places they were going before they knew they were going there." The implications for galactic civilization were enormous. Military tacticians realized they had been completely wrong about human combat capabilities. Medical professionals understood that human doctors weren't just treating patients differently. They were treating different patients entirely, focusing on what conditions would become rather than what they currently were. Scientists began to reconsider their understanding of intelligence itself. Was rapid reaction time truly a sign of advanced cognition, or was predictive capability more important? The humans suggested that being able to see the future was more valuable than being able to react quickly to the present. "We need to completely revise our first contact protocols," Dr. Cathara announced to the Galactic Council via emergency communication. "We've been measuring the wrong capabilities entirely." The council chamber erupted in discussion as representatives from dozens of species tried to process this information. The Veltari delegation was particularly disturbed, having built their entire military doctrine around superior reaction times. The Nexari were fascinated by the concept of predictive intelligence, while the Zephyrians wanted to understand how human prediction could be integrated with their coordination abilities. Are you suggesting that humans represent a new category of intelligence? Asked Counselor Prextan, the session's moderator. I'm suggesting that intelligence itself is more complex than we previously understood, Dr. Cathara replied. We've been categorizing species based on processing speed and reaction time, but humans demonstrate that predictive capability may be more important than reactive capability. Dr. Lisa Harper was invited to address the council directly. She stood before the assembled representatives, feeling the weight of speaking for her entire species. Honored counselors, she began, I think there's been a fund. 6 months after the revelation about human predictive capabilities, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have anticipated. The Galactic Council had issued new directives for interacting with humanity, and the species that had once been dismissed as slow and unremarkable had become the most sought-after advisors in known space. Captain Ryan Brooks stood in the briefing room of the Galactic Military Academy, facing an audience of alien officers from 24 different species. The room was packed with beings who had previously considered human reflexes inadequate for serious military consideration. Now they hung on his every word. The key to understanding human tactical thinking, Ryan explained, is recognizing that we're not playing the same game as everyone else. While you react to your enemy's moves, we respond to their intentions. A Veltari colonel raised her hand. But how do you determine enemy intentions without detailed intelligence analysis? Ryan smiled. We don't analyze their intentions, we predict them. Every human brain is constantly running simulations of what other people might do next. It's not something we think about consciously. It's just how our minds work. He activated a holographic display showing a complex tactical scenario. Watch this simulation. I'm going to show you how a human approaches multi-threat engagement. The display showed enemy ships approaching from multiple directions, using advanced stealth technology and coordinated tactics. Ryan began positioning his forces, but his movements seemed to make no sense to the alien observers. Instead of responding to the visible threats, he was deploying his ships to empty areas of space. He's positioning incorrectly, whispered a Nexari admiral. The enemy ships are nowhere near those coordinates. But as the simulation continued, the enemy ships began moving exactly where Ryan had predicted. His forces were already in position when the attacks developed, turning potential ambush into devastating counterattacks. Impossible, breathed the Veltari colonel. How did you know they would move to those positions? Because those were the logical positions for them to move to, Ryan replied. Once I understood their overall strategy, their individual movements became predictable. I didn't react to where they were. I responded to where they were going. The demonstration continued for several hours, with Ryan showing how human predictive thinking could be applied to various military scenarios. The alien officers were amazed by the effectiveness of the approach, but they struggled to understand how it worked. Can this capability be taught? Asked the Zephyrian general. We're still figuring that out, Ryan admitted. Human prediction seems to be largely unconscious. We're trying to develop training methods that can help other species think more predictively. But it's challenging. Meanwhile, at the Galactic Medical Center, Dr. Amy Collins was revolutionizing healthcare practices across dozens of worlds. Her approach to medicine, based on treating future conditions rather than current symptoms, had achieved remarkable results. The key, she explained to a gathering of alien physicians, is understanding that most medical conditions follow predictable patterns. If you can identify those patterns early, you can intervene before the condition becomes serious. Dr. Krenlos, the Veltari physician who had worked with Amy during the crisis, presented a case study. Dr. Collins examined a patient with minor stress indicators. According to our diagnostic protocols, no treatment was necessary. But she predicted the patient would develop severe anxiety syndrome within 72 hours and began preventive therapy. The patient never developed anxiety syndrome, added Dr. Yathara, the Nixari scientist. The condition was prevented entirely because treatment began before symptoms appeared, Amy nodded. Most medical training focuses on diagnosing and treating existing conditions. But human medicine has always emphasized prevention. We treat the patient we expect them to become, not just the patient they are right now. The alien doctors were fascinated by this approach, but they found it difficult to implement. Their diagnostic equipment was designed to detect current conditions, not predict future ones. Amy was working with technology specialists to develop new medical scanners that could identify predictive patterns. The challenge, she explained, is that prediction requires understanding context, not just data. Human doctors don't just look at test results. They consider the patient's history, lifestyle, stress levels, and dozens of other factors that might influence future health. The revolution in understanding human capabilities had also transformed diplomatic relations. Commander Jake Martinez had been appointed as the first human strategic advisor to the Galactic Council, a position created specifically to take advantage of human predictive capabilities. Humans approach diplomacy differently than other species, he explained to the Council during a strategy session. We don't just respond to current political situations. We prepare for where those situations are likely to develop. The Council was dealing with rising tensions between the Veltari and Nexari governments over trade disputes. Traditional diplomatic approaches had focused on resolving current disagreements, but Jake suggested a different strategy. The trade dispute is a symptom, not the cause, he said. Both species are worried about resource security as the galaxy expands. If we address the underlying concerns about future resource availability, the current trade disagreements will resolve themselves. The Council was skeptical, but they agreed to try Jake's approach. Instead of negotiating current trade terms, they developed a long-term resource sharing agreement that addressed both species' concerns about future scarcity. The trade dispute disappeared almost immediately once both sides felt secure about their long-term needs. Remarkable, observed Counselor Prexton. By solving a problem that didn't exist yet, you eliminated a problem that did exist. That's how human thinking works, Jake replied. We solve tomorrow's problems today, which usually makes today's problems disappear. The success of human advisors led to unprecedented demand for human expertise. Security Chief Ben Rodriguez found himself training alien military units in predictive tactics. Dr. Lisa Harper was working with xenobiologists to understand how other species might develop similar capabilities. The fascinating thing, Lisa explained during a research conference, is that all species have some predictive capability, but most have evolved to emphasize other cognitive strengths. The challenge is helping them access prediction abilities they already possess. She had been working with volunteers from various species, teaching them basic prediction techniques. The results were encouraging but limited. Other species could learn to think more predictively, but they couldn't match the unconscious, automatic prediction that humans took for granted. It's like teaching someone to breathe manually, she said. They can do it, but it requires conscious effort. For humans, prediction is as automatic as breathing. The research had revealed something profound about human evolution. Earth's complex, unpredictable environment had forced humans to develop extraordinary predictive capabilities. While other species had evolved in more stable environments that favored speed or strength or coordination, humans had evolved in chaos that favored anticipation. Earth was apparently a very dangerous place, Dr. Cathara observed during a joint research session. Climate changes, natural disasters, predators, diseases, resource scarcity. Your species survived by learning to see problems coming before they arrived. That's probably why we're so paranoid, Ryan joked. We're always expecting something to go wrong. But that's exactly why you're so effective, Dr. Cathara replied. You prepare for things to go wrong, so when they do, you're ready. The galactic perspective on human capabilities had completed a full reversal. The species that had seemed slow and unremarkable was now recognized as possessing unique abilities that no other known species had developed to the same degree. Dr. Cathara filed her final report on human capabilities 6 months after her initial assessment. The contrast was striking. Species designation, human, she dictated. Classification, predictive intelligence, unique in known galaxy. Cognitive framework operates on temporal prediction rather than reactive processing. Reaction, time measurements irrelevant due to anticipatory decision-making. She paused, considering her recommendations. Suggested partnership status, strategic alliance, highest priority. Areas of contribution, military tactics, medical innovation, diplomatic strategy, crisis management, long-term planning. Combat. Assessment, extreme tactical advantage due to predictive capabilities. The report concluded with a statement that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. Human cognitive capabilities represent a new category of intelligence. Their ability to operate in predicted future scenarios rather than current conditions provides advantages that increase with situation complexity. Recommend immediate integration of human advisors into all major galactic initiatives. As the report was filed, Commander Jake Martinez reflected on the irony of the situation. They thought we were slow because they were measuring how quickly we could respond to the unexpected, he said to his staff. They never considered that humans are really good at making sure nothing stays unexpected for very long. The galaxy had learned that the future belonged to those who could see it coming. And humanity, it turned out, had been living in the future all along. Dr. Amy Ko